Hello and welcome. Starting May 25th, that's Monday, domestic flights in India will resume. Now, it's not going to be the same thing that you were perhaps used to earlier. It's definitely not going to be one of those George Clooney-like moments where you could be doing continuous flights, because the conditions in which you will now fly will be quite different and quite challenging. Now, there are a long list of do's and don'ts that the government and the Ministry of Civil Aviation have already put out. Some of them are to do with airports. Many of them are to do with inside the aircraft, including the fact that you will not be served any food. And finally, there is a restriction on prices. There are caps on prices depending on the time that's going to be taken. All of this will hold till the 25th of August, after 24th of August, after which it will be reviewed. So, flying is going to resume. That's the good news. But the not so good news is that life will not be the same, but not that we expected life ever to be the same. Now, how is this going to pan out, both for the airports, for airlines, those who are flying, pilots, and so on? So let's ask our guests today. I'm joined by Sudhakara Reddy, National President of the Airline Passenger Association of India, Sam Thomas, President of the Airline Pilots Association, and Jitendra Bhargava, former Executive Director of Air India. So let me begin with you, Mr. Reddy. First question to you. How do you see this panning out? Is this I don't know whether we can fight with any of these guidelines, but what's your first reaction?
See, my first reaction would be that those who are in dire need of travel will only take a flight, because it's going to be a completely different ball game. And the kind of things that they have announced, in the form of guidelines, it's very tough for somebody to take a flight and, you'll have to give an undertaking, then you'll have to have upload a medical certificate, and then you must have an Aarogya Setu App on your mobile, which should show green. And then after that, they are going to take your temperature before you enter the terminal. Then after you enter the terminal, they're going to take again. And before you board, they're going to take. And so many conditions. And, then I personally feel that in the initial phase, there will be a, fairly good load factors, maybe for the first 1 week or 10 days. After that, it's going to peter off. And this one-third, capacity operation is more than enough, at least for the next couple of months. This is my gut feeling.
Right. And you feel that these guidelines are fair? I mean, do you feel that any of them are too stringent or are not practical?
See, some of them are definitely not. First, they said no cabin baggage. And we also said that is the best thing to do, because then there is no, social distancing involved at all, because you go and get seated on your seat and then get stuck there. Whereas once you have a hand baggage, you don't know whether to put it on the...
but there is hand baggage.
And I don't know why they permitted that. In the SOP they had circulated, there was no hand baggage allowed. And only one check-in baggage was allowed. And then we are very happy that they have accepted our recommendation that only water bottles must be distributed. That too, now the minister has said that it will be put on the seat, which is a good thing to do, because there is minimum contact. Then the other thing we said was that one of the airport staff was supposed to dispense the sanitizer in the hands of a passenger. Now you're asking a passenger to wear gloves. Then what is the benefit of a sanitizer when you wear gloves? I don't understand it. And then there are now...
Yeah, we'll come to that fine print in a moment. But let's get another view from the front seat. Sam Thomas, what's your sense? Now, the pilots sit very close to each other. I don't think, I'm sure you will enlighten us, but even 6 feet apart. And they have to be obviously in good health and kept safe. So how are you seeing these guidelines?
Govind, firstly, I detest the term social distancing. It's a Western term picked up by all of us in India and given to everybody else. Physical distancing would be a more appropriate term. As far as this physical distancing in a cockpit is concerned, even the largest cockpit, probably the A380, has about 2.5 feet between 2.5 to 3 feet between the two pilots at best. So that is not a feasible idea. Secondly, to the pilots, it's absolutely confusing. Firstly, even in the pre-COVID times, the regulations were so bad that we don't know, whether we are in the right or wrong at any given time. Now, I think a lot of regulations are coming out which have no basis. I mean, people who are promulgating the law have no idea what it is to fly an airplane. Now, additionally, all of us, the pilot community, are generally confused. We are waiting for crystal clear orders. One example I can give you is if you ask me to wear a mask and fly along with my co-pilot, there are very specific things like communication between us. I have to be crystal clear on what I'm telling him. So say, for instance, I tell him next page and he presses the next page just because it's coming through a mask. It can cause a lot of confusion. We don't have time to sort out these confusions. So at the moment, I feel that these are irrational regulations being passed. Having said that, nobody knows what to do. It's better to err on the side of caution. And as far as the industry is concerned, I think nothing worse than this can happen to us because pre-COVID itself, we were in bad state. And from now or from here on in, we will only look upward and we will prosper.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Let me, and Sam is a pilot with Jet Airways, an airline that's will hopefully find a buyer at some point or soon. Mr. Jitendra Bhargava, can I come to you now? Is this good for air travel or is it not good for air travel? Or is this only going to basically, take care of all the pent up demand, people desperate to get back somewhere? And I'll come to the point about what do you do when you get somewhere.
Govind, first thing is the flights had to get back in the air one day or the other. And the date has been fixed as 25th of May. Now, there will be questions asked as to whenever you're starting, because when you recommence, there will be questions and problems. Sam may be right that, look, there are apprehensions that they have, and how do you put apprehensions to rest? I had early morning tweeted today that instead of allowing 35% of the flights of the summer schedule to get into the air, start with a modest 10%. You will be able to check the infection prevention protocols. There will be staff at the airport who are getting accustomed to a new way of functioning. Security personnel, how passengers going on to it. Why burden the system? And as you find the system getting on to proper thing, you can always scale up the flight operation. That's part one. Sudhakar made a point about it on the passengers.
But could the issue be that, you send too few people in and then the whole thing becomes unviable to start with?
No, it's not a too few people. It's a question of number of flights. We are not talking of 10% of the passengers. I'm talking of 10% of the flight. So instead of having 33 flights to Mumbai, between Mumbai to Delhi, have 10 flights and you'll be able to check and there's space between each hour. So you will be able to do it. So what I was wanting is the first priority should be to ensure that passengers do not get infected. You must have heard the minister talking about it, giving the logic as to why the middle seat is not being left vacant, because the fares will go up. Now, that's hardly a logical argument coming from the government. The first priority has to be safety and not the fare. So the logical, though I fully concur, that airline, by not leaving the middle seat vacant, does not pose any kind of problem, because two things are important here. One, all passengers face in one direction, so no two passengers are facing each other. The second part is the air system that prevails in the aircraft is akin to what you have it in the air conditioning in the hospitals. So you are safe on that count. But the onus should be on the passengers. And I would like the Air Passenger Association of India to send out a mail to the passengers to behave responsibly. We all know how passengers rush to get out of an aircraft on arrival of a flight. How are we going to witness that kind of a chaotic situation? So you can create protocols. And in my opinion, protocols are really detailed. If only
that's a good point. Let me bring in Mr. Reddy. Mr. Reddy, so tell me, is this, finally, yes, if passengers either book enough or don't book too many tickets and behave themselves as they board aircraft, on aircraft, getting off, engaging with flight crew, all of that happens in a disciplined way, then there is no real problem. I think the question is that most passengers are not perhaps used to being disciplined in an aircraft. I'm not talking about in India or anywhere else, but definitely in India where we've seen this.
No, but with almost 2 months of lockdown, everybody has changed the way they live, the way they behave. And let me assure you, and the passengers, they know fully well that they have to undergo certain trauma before they reach their destination. I don't see why a passenger should misbehave. I mean, off late, I've been seeing when the crew makes an announcement that please don't stand up before the seatbelt sign is switched off. I think most of them, I would say 99.9% of them have been following it. I agree, in the olden days, people, as soon as it touches the ground, everybody used to get up and they're in a hurry to go. But I think that will change.
Mr. Reddy is a business class passenger.
So no, I'm not. I fly mostly low-cost airlines. I used to fly Jet Airways, of course.
All right.
My favorite airline.
No, so Mr. Reddy, what about this other point? I mean, how do you think passengers, passengers come in, they demand food, they demand water, and, now, of course, there's no food. Water will be maybe served only once. Is this a world that passengers can even get used to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have any choice, at least for the first fortnight. Like Ms. Bhargava was saying, you will gain immense experience in the first 2 weeks in every sense of the word, because, the new normal, how does it work? Is it working? Is it, they have already experienced with this Vande, Bharat mission. And I think it has so far gone on very successfully. But there are two issues that I would like you to keep in mind and address. One is they are talking of quarantine in Maharashtra. Now, I am going for a board meeting. Let's say the flights resume from Chennai to Mumbai. I am going there for just a day, go in the morning and come back in the evening. Then if I have to undergo a 14-day quarantine in Maharashtra,
that's not practical. Yeah, that's not practical.
Yeah, it's not practical, and
right.
I mean, I will not go. I mean, why should I?
Yeah, absolutely. No. So I think that's a different discussion. We'll come to that in a moment. Mr. Bhargav, let me come back to you. Very broadly speaking, so the guidelines are exhaustive, not just for onboard, and we'll come to onboard, but also from the time you disembark outside the terminal, you get into the terminal, the screening, proceeding, no check-in counters. Obviously, all the points of contact have been minimized. Even at the gate, you will put your own boarding pass on the scanner and then go in ahead. I'm sure someone will be watching, but they'll be far away. So, but in general, where do you see more maybe stress points? Is it going to be before the boarding the aircraft, or is it going to be onboard the aircraft? And I'll come to Sam with the same question as well.
Policy makers believe that everybody has all the infrastructure available with them. Correct. Print your own boarding card. How many of them will have printers at home? With much of the shopping centers closed, you wouldn't have a shop outside to do it. You see, so
you're saying there is the stress point begins even before you reach the airport. So that's one challenge. Okay, what about as you enter the airport?
Govind, the fact is, it's basically a matter of temperament of a person. You can make your self tense for no rhyme or reason. The fact is, we got to understand we are in abnormal times. The flights are being commenced because they need to commence. You cannot have the pre-COVID-19 systems on board. So you got to familiarize yourself and comply with them. Now, do not crib and say, look, this wasn't there. You have made two mentions of it. There'll be no food served on board, and there'll be only one bottle of water given. Now, let's look at the rationale behind it. For drinking water or having food, you got to remove the mask from your mouth. And you got passengers sitting by your side. Now, you can't be encouraging this, that I keep taking one sip now, another sip after 5 minutes, and third sip after 10 minutes. Now, you've got to be behaving properly and responsibly. The purpose of it is. That's where I've been advocating that it should be made abundantly clear to passengers that these are the regulations you got to look at. Unfortunately, as you very rightly mentioned, the SOPs are too detailed and too many. Now, the question is, how many passengers will go through them? So there should be a simple thing given at the back of the ticket that this is what concerns you on a flight, and this is what you're required to do. Make it as clear as possible so that there is not an iota of doubt in anybody's mind what they are going to do, how they're going to behave on a flight, what is there for them. And they are not entering the airport unknowing on what's happening, because you cannot have people guide you at the airport.
Themselves with information, and hopefully they will, even as they buy the tickets, that will start opening up. Now, Sam, once the aircraft takes off, I mean, it all rests on you, on your shoulders. Now, the way passengers conduct themselves, the way they engage with crew, the demands they make, all of that is something that you have to manage. How are you seeing this?
Okay, we are pretty well trained to take action as per guidelines, but those guidelines are pre-COVID-19 guidelines. They are crystal clear and we know what to do. First couple of weeks, we are not going to have much of a problem. However, given time, we have people getting up and saying that they want to, reach their destination quickly. Why are we delayed? We had this lovely instance of us ordering an evacuation, and one of the ladies got up and said that she's a jet privilege member. So these kind of things tend to happen, and we have no guidelines. What we are worried about is if there is a medical case, how do we handle it at this time, since there are no written guidelines given to us, and how we should be taking that. But we know in the pre-COVID-19 scenario, but post-COVID-19, this is going to be a challenge. And a lot of fear and stigmatizing of the patients also has happened. And that is something that we need to guard against. And let's see, let's wait for the guidelines to come. That's what I'm harping about all the time. Use the pilots, use everybody, all the subject matter experts before you formulate any kind of guidelines.
Demands on you inside the cockpits are more than ever before. Now, if you have to wear a mask, which in itself you're saying is impractical, plus thinking about what's happening at the back, apart from what usually happens at the back. So how are you going to manage all of this?
We are adequately trained for that. It's just that this is an additional distraction. If the cabin crew keep coming in and telling passengers so-and-so is creating a problem, they are duty bound to report that to us. And that could be for any reason. It could be a medical reason. I don't know how post this new regulations, how do we handle a medical passenger? If, say, for instance, somebody has a medical issue on board, I don't know what to do because we are not told what to do. And that's what I'm highlighting, that the regulations have to be crystal clear to us. It can't be ambiguous. That is
right.
What
and I'm also assuming what the guidelines that you will get will be different from the ones that we are getting, because yours will come from the DGCA. So, Sam, what's the kind of situation that you foresee that can happen? So, assuming, going by what our other two guests have said, most people are going to be are going to be conscious or self-conscious, are going to obviously be careful, at least in the first few weeks. Now, what can happen later, and then what could you do or should you be doing if something goes wrong?
Those strict protocols have to be gone by the book. And what I'm trying to highlight is, at the moment, we do not have those regulations. It's just spur of the moment kind of decisions that we have to take based on our previous experience. And previous experiences were not with the COVID scenario in place. So whatever we had to do is to go by the book. We have a medlink that we need to get in touch with, the ground staff that we need to get in touch with, saying that so-and-so passenger has a problem, and those strict protocols are in place. My concern is what is going to sort of bother the industry. One is the virus. The other, the bigger problem, is the bureaucracy and these rules coming out. Nobody will come and stick their neck out and say ex-bureaucrat is causing this problem. But if you go through the rules, they are not simple. They are not made by people who are in the aviation industry, and they are not made by people who know anything.
Sam, aren't these similar to what airlines elsewhere in the world are doing? I mean, do you have a sense?
I do, because I represent India in the International Federation of Airline Pilots Association. They are bringing out these kind of rules, but they are not sort of so complicated. They're simple. Yes, they want physical distancing at the airports, not inside the aircraft. It doesn't work inside the aircraft. We have circulated air, and you're talking at one point, you're saying that you need 1.5 meters. The distance between two seats, even if the middle seat is left vacant, is between 26 and 32 inches. And what about the people? Right. Are you going to tell the virus that no, you need to affect people only in a straight line? Can't it turn right, left? So these are not possible. So there are crystal clear guidelines. What I want them to do is involve the subject matter experts into it while formulating the guidelines. That will help. Let's go by international standards. Let's not just sit somewhere and formulate rules which is same for a taxi industry and superimpose that onto an airline industry.
Okay, right. Let me come back to you, Mr. Reddy.
Defend the airline industry. Let's put it this way. It's unfair to believe that there has been no consultation prior to release of SOPs. The ministry has had a dialogue with all the airline owners and had done. This has been going on for a few days, and then they've come up, number one. Number two, IATA has issued a set of guidelines, both pre-flight, on-board, and post-flight, on what to follow. These SOPs are not very different, and a few examples will illustrate the detail on which they've gone. For example, they're even marking, please do not use this chair, because if they find that chair has been infected or something of this kind. So they've gone into great detail. Give them credit for what they've done. We can always cast doubt on what, look, our past experience may perhaps be guiding us that, look, everything will go wrong, etc. No, it doesn't. Have faith in the people who are going to be responsible for reintroducing the flights. They have taken necessary safeguards. As I said earlier, rather than getting on to a scale of 30-35% of the flights to be in operation, it could have perhaps been limited to a certain small number, certain airports, and once you had tested the protocols, perhaps could have been extended to all airports and on a larger scale.
Okay, Mr. Reddy?
Yeah. Now, what was the question?
Yeah, no, go ahead. So the question I was trying to ask earlier is that, so if assuming, let's say, passengers are now fully aware and conversant with these guidelines, do you expect any of these guidelines to change, or what would you think that could change as we go ahead? Because let's say we are now going in with an approach of extreme caution. Do you think there is something that we could moderate as we go down the line?
Yeah, like Mr. Bhargava said, I don't think even 10% of the people will have a printer at home. And today, I can't go out of my house because of so many restrictions. And that is one thing that's not going to work. Second thing is, they are asking you to download an Aarogya Setu app. There are a lot of asymptomatic, passengers, which they will not show anything on the app. They will not show anything on the temperature. In fact, the German Institute has done a study, and they said it's a very dangerous thing to have such people on the board, because they are already infected, they are contagious, but they don't know themselves, and the co-passenger,
they will spread it. Yeah.
So,
right. So if you're saying that if you were to look at easing some of the rules, they would be to do with the Aarogya Setu app, which also has, there are privacy concerns about that. That's one. And the second is, you're saying that do not insist on a printed ticket, because maybe people can show the
mobile phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Which they've been doing already, at least to show the ticket, but maybe they can have a barcode, which in many international airports, you could use the same barcode to also scan at the gate. So, going forward, this is just still early days. The announcements have just come. May 25th is what we are going to see the start of, and it stands to be reviewed on August 24th. Now, the one thing that will happen is the number of cases will go up. We may start plateauing at some point. We don't know. I don't know, but it's definitely going to rise in the interim. Is that likely to create a problem in any way? Mr. Jitendra Bhargava, let me go with you.
You see, given the fact that you got to weigh between life and livelihood, economy being put on track, it's a risk worth taking with all the necessary safeguards, and that is what the government has done. We did run Shramik trains to get the migrants from their place of work to their respective states, etc., which led to a spike in the number of cases. Now, there is a risk that you need to take, but take the necessary safeguards as they've been highlighted in the SOPs, and let's hope it doesn't happen. Now, as Mr. Reddy had earlier said about it, I would have expected the minister to clarify that, look, there shall be no quarantine on arrival, rather than say that it will depend on the protocols, safety protocols of the respective state from where the passenger is landing.
But that's because we are, for instance, you and I are in Mumbai, where we have a lockdown till the 31st, and other cities it's already been lifted to some extent.
So when you have a flight from Delhi to Mumbai and you know the lockdown is down, clarify that these are the airports at which quarantine will be subjected to. But rather than say, okay, so you see, leave it vague for a passenger to find out. And imagine a passenger arrives and he is given a certain direction. What kind of a trauma he goes through?
So, right. Okay. So we're running out of time. Last question. Let me come to you, Mr. Reddy, first. So, I mean, the feedback that I'm seeing in general, I mean, this is a little anecdotal, but most people seem to be demanding international flights more than domestic flights. Is that something that you feel we should be looking at first as a priority?
Actually, our association has been besieged with requests from passengers who are stranded. There are right from Bangalore to Chandigarh to, you name the city, and they are all employed elsewhere. They had come here on a short vacation or a short visit, and they are stuck from the 24th night of March. Now, they all want
These are international. These are international, right? You mean overseas?
International, yes. So, Vande Bharat mission, unfortunately, is not connecting all of them. If I have to travel to Dubai, and if I am in Mysore, to travel to Mysore to Hyderabad, there is a flight only from Hyderabad to Dubai, let's say, an Air India flight. To travel is not possible. I mean, it is you need to get pass for interstate travel, and it's quite a Herculean task. So we believe that they must find out a way. In fact, we have opened up on our website registrations for all those who are stuck here, and we are hoping to take it up with the ministry, including Prime Minister's office, and we are confident that we'll be able to find a way, because they are going to lose their jobs, they are without their families, and they're suffering a lot.
So that is where the demand is, and that's where I guess the response also should be focused on. Sam, international flights, what's your sense? I mean, the demand seems to be more there, but will that lead in another set of guidelines and regulations that you will have to manage?
It depends. Now, if you were to operate to Italy and Spain, there's going to be a different set of rules. And other countries who are relatively not in that much of a sort of population that's affected. See, what I'd like to point out is, like Mr. Bhargava had said, that extensive discussions have taken place on these regulations. There are three types of people on an airplane: cockpit crew, cabin crew, and passengers. Has Mr. Reddy, who heads the Passenger Association, been consulted on this regulation?
Yes.
Then I withdraw my comment. If that's so well thought out and put these regulations out, then
there are two more. Yeah.
No, in fact, through you, Govind, Sam, we have given a detailed recommendations on each of those guidelines that they had issued, and I'm happy to say that some of them they have accepted.
Yes, sir. A draft is given out, and it's given for public comments. And then what I'm saying is, call in the president of the Passenger Association, call in all the relative people and have a discussion. Don't go by something that's written or feedback.
Sam, your point is that the pilots have not been taken into confidence. At least that's your feeling?
That is absolutely true. I want to know any pilot who has been. Don't pull out two pilots who work for DGCA and say that they represent the entire community. We have varied kind of issues, and that needs to be addressed only by subject matter experts.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll find out more whether pilots were taken into confidence or not.
Yeah. When you made a mention of international flights, let me just clarify on that.
Last word, Mr. Bhargava, go ahead.
The commencement of international flights cannot be a unilateral action of the government of India. There has to be concurrence from the other side to allow flights. A lot of people have been stranded, say, for example, UAE in India, people who work in UAE and are stranded here. But they cannot fly on the flights that are being operated to Dubai because UAE has said, post 1st June, you can bring them and not before. United States have put restrictions, Singapore has put restrictions that Indian nationals with certain kind of visas cannot be taken on the flights. So please understand the constraints under which, and let us not create a public perception that everything that is being done is on the wrong. There are a lot of good things done. It will happen. It takes time. The only thing you can fault the government of India, let me explain, so that you think that I'm objective and I'm not sparing the government, is why make a Vande Bharat mission program for 3 weeks and schedule a flight on 3rd of June when you have enough capacity with Air India, grounded capacity with Air India to mount a flight to these countries tomorrow, day after. Why one flight to United States? Why not 4 flights per day as is the normal schedule of Air India? So the question is, there is no sense of urgency that they have been stranded for 2 months or so. Let me bring them now. Why 1st of June, 2nd of June, 3rd of June? If you now that they've said we are going to request the private sector come airlines to also mount flights. Well, it could have been done from day one.
We've run out of time, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me. May 25th it is when flights will resume after 60 days for all those who are either itching to fly or desperate to fly and had to reach somewhere within this country, mind you, will hopefully get off the ground. But flying is never, like many other things, going to be the same again. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.